Hi, and welcome to Introduction to Clasys App Form Advanced Features. This is part 1 of this video series. The features that we will demo in this session are 1. Saving data in a form to 2 SharePoint lists. 2. Working with a web service. 3. Working with a grid control. 4. Working with the drop-down control, which reads the data from a list. 5. Configure cascading drop-downs in a grid. 6. Adding basic rules in a form. To demonstrate the features in part 1 of this video, we will be working with an order form which saves to 2 lists. I will give you a brief demo of the form we are going to create. This form saves to 2 different lists, order list and order details list. Here, I will enter the data in the text boxes and the grid control. When you enter a zip code, it will read the city and state from an online web service. We have 2 drop-down controls in the grid, and you can see that the second drop-down will refresh based on the value entered in the first column. Selecting the product will read and populate the quantity per unit and rate of that product from the list. When you enter the quantity, it will calculate the total amount for that product in the grid. The total amount, shipping amount, and net amount will also be calculated based on the values you enter in the grid. I will go ahead and save the record. Now I can go to the lists and show you the data that is saved. You can see the order and the order details saved to these lists. The relationship between these 2 lists is the order ID. Now we will go to the SharePoint site and create this form. In this SharePoint site, we have a list with the categories of the product. The next list is for products. I have imported the data to these lists from the Northwind database. The other 2 lists, where the data will be saved, are orders and order details. The order ID from the orders list will be saved to order details list to maintain the relationship. The order ID is the default ID column in the orders list. This will be auto-generated. After saving data to the orders list, this order ID will be saved to the order details list. Now, I will go to Clasys App Forms option under the Site Actions menu. Folder Explorer is a Windows Explorer-like view in the central admin where you can create the folders and forms in App Forms. Here, I will create a new folder and name it Orders. We can create a new form by clicking in the New Form button in the toolbar. Now we can give this form a name, Order Management. We can change the width and height of the form as required. We can adjust the width of the columns. The first column will be used for setting the margin of the controls to be placed in the second column. Now, we can rearrange the other columns as required. We can also add additional columns using the button in the toolbar. I have added 4 more columns here. I will change the cell span of the cell in the second row and second column to 8. Then place a label control in that cell, which be the title of the form. Format the font in the labeling. Change the text to Order Management. The Properties pop-up will have all the commonly used attributes of a control. The Advanced Properties panel on the right side of the designer will allow you to change the other attributes of the control. The width and height of the control can be changed by clicking and dragging the highlighted border on the right and bottom sides of the selected control. I will click on the Save button to save the changes that I have done in this form. Now, I will place the required controls for the first field, Order ID. We need to use a label and text box. Both the text box and label controls can be found under the section Standard in the toolbox. I will have the text Order ID for the label and name the text box TXT Order ID. We can use the Properties pop-up to set these properties. The controls look and feel will change in real time based on the property you change. This will help the user visualize the look and feel for the end user. I will uncheck the Enable property to disable the Order ID text box because it will be auto-generated. Once I finalize the width of the controls, I can resize the column again. I can now copy the label control and use it for the next fields, order date, and shipping date, so that I don't need to reformat the other labels. Once I paste the label, I just need to change the text property. In this case, I change the label text to order date. I will paste the label again for the shipping date and change the text of the label to shipping date. The label width needs to be adjusted so that we have the label text in one line. I will now place Date Picker control for the order date. This control is also under the section Standard in the toolbox. Change the width to 110 and name the control DT order date, then change the format to MMDDYYYY. As we discussed earlier, the format property of the control is not available in the Properties pop-up, so I will go to the Properties panel to change it. Now, I can copy this Date Picker control and use that for the shipping date, so that I just need to give a new name. The new name will be DT shipping date. I need to place a heading for the next section, shipping details. So, I will change the cell span of the cell to 3, then copy and paste the label order ID. The text of the label will read shipping details. I can change the width and format the font. For now, I will make it bold and underline to give it a feel of heading. I can come back and format the labels later once I'm done with all the form functionalities. So, let us concentrate on placing the rest of the form controls and get a basic user interface ready. I will place 3 more labels for customer name, address, and zip code. I will go back and copy and paste the same order ID label so that I don't need any formatting done other than changing the label texts. As the text customer name does not fit in the label with the current width, I will increase the width slightly so that I can see the complete text in one line. I will copy the new label for the other 2 controls in the same column. Then change the text of the first label to address and the second one to zip code. The text box for the customer name and address will span 3 cells. I can now drag and drop a text box in the cell with the span of 3. This text box will be for customer name. I will change the width to 275. The name of the text box can be TXT customer name. I am just following the prefix with the control name so that we know the type of control we are using. This will come handy when we use the control name in the rules configuration and data source column mapping. I will pause the video and place all the other form controls and format it as required. Now that I have completed the shipping details section, I will add more rows so that we can design the next section in the form. I'm going to place a dynamic grid control in the next row, so we'll change the cell span to 8. Before placing the grid, I will place the controls for the summary section. Total amount, shipping charges, and net amount will be the controls we will need in the summary section. I have copied an existing label for these controls and pasted them as required. Now I will change the text of each label I pasted. The labels will read total amount, shipping charges, and net amount. The total amount will be the sum of the product rate for the quantity selected in the grid. Shipping charges will be 10% of the total amount. The net total will be the sum of total amount and shipping charges. The labels will read total amount, shipping charges, and net amount. I have paused the video and added text boxes for these 3 rows. The dynamic grid control is under the data section in the toolbox. I will drag and drop a control in the cell where I have changed the column span. I will now change the width and height. Let us check the form in preview to see the end-user view of this form. Now we can learn how to configure a web service to read the state and city when the user enters the zip code.